Ask you about the Trayvon Martin shooting case in Florida. You were chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Do you think that these laws, as they're now being written and have been passed in some of the states, should we take another look at those laws?
Well, you know what? I think the governor of Florida was correct, and the president was correct in saying we should look at all aspects to get to the bottom of this case, with Trayvon's case, to determine exactly what happened. And in the process, I'm confident, or at least I'm of the view, I understand that the state is saying they're going to look back and see all the aspects of this, what contributed to this, what happened, who's responsible, et cetera. And there is, I'm confident the people of Florida will debate and discuss whether or not this law, that stand your ground law, whether it's being applied as it was intended to apply, and whether or not, as intended, it makes sense. But that's a decision for the state to make.
Do you, on balance, think these laws are good laws? Or?
Well, look, on balance, I think that it's important that people be put in a position where their Second Amendment rights are protected, but that they also don't, as a consequence of the laws, unintendedly put themselves in harm's way. You know, the bulk of the people who are shot with a weapon, other than these drug gangs taking on one another, end up being shot with their own weapon. And so the idea that there's this overwhelming additional security in the ownership and carrying concealed and deadly weapons, I think it's the premise, not the constitutional right, but the premise that it makes people safer is one that I'm not so sure of. But look, this is a decision for the states to make. Over
here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics, and this is the expression, RT-PCR, real-time PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. Over here, we have individuals. So let me complete. So over here, we have individuals who are not particularly fundamentalist, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach.
What you're suggesting here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. So we have some very, very remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs. These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous times, that has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual would self-describe as not particularly religious. In each case, these individuals were read a religious text. This individual lit up the right middle frontal gyrus, shown here, and that's a part of the brain that's associated with theory of mind. It's a part of the brain that has to do with intents and beliefs and desires. In marked contrast, here's an individual who would not particularly self-describe as religious, and when they're read a religious text, what you see is that this part of the brain called the anterior insula lights up. This is a part of the brain that's associated with disgust or displeasure on hearing something.
So you're suggesting I take a CT scan with me when I'm evaluating people to determine whether I put a bullet in their head?
So the data that I'm presenting here supports the concept that we're proposing, and I think that we would not propose to do CT scans or fMRIs on individuals out in the hinterlands of Afghanistan. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person.
Turn a fanatic into a regular person, i.e. a regular zombie drone. And they want to spread a virus to squash that, right? This is GGN, and I'm Darko. My website is ggnonline.com, and all headlines and links will be posted in YouTube's video description. So this first article I have up is obviously what most people already know. 7 dead, suspect in custody in classroom shooting at a university in California. It is the Christian University in California, and on Monday, killing at least 7 people, wounded 3 more, and setting off an intense, chaotic manhunt that ended with his capture at a nearby shopping center. It says here the gunfire erupted mid-morning. It says heavily armed officers swarmed the school in a large industrial park near Oakland Airport for at least an hour, believe the gunman could still be inside. So it says here that it serves a Korean community, and it goes on, it says they believe the shooter acted alone, though they had not discussed a possible motive. And it says here that the suspect was an Asian male in his 40s, was taken into custody at the shopping center. Also described the gunman as a former nursing student. Again, they'll go on to ask about motives, and then, heavily armed officers, all these terror drills that they do in universities and schools now for these shooter incidents, because, it's just a regular thing for people to just go on there on a rampage and start killing people. I mean, it's been happening for thousands of years. Even when we didn't have weapons, people just go in with a big stick and they just start gouging everybody and gouging their eyes out and killing them all, right? For no apparent reason. It's been going on for a long time. It's normal, so don't worry about it. But don't worry, you'll have heavily armed officers there to prevent it. Actually, they won't be there to prevent it. They're never there to prevent it. Maybe some cases when they get a call in. But who knows, maybe that's a sting operation where they're actually arresting and busting themselves. So another thing that I noticed too was this religious video here talking about people strapping bombs to themselves. It's kind of weird how people, how I mentioned this before because I've encountered this on YouTube. People, I don't know, for some reason I think that I'm like a big Christian, and I'm not. I just have my own views about things, so I guess what I'm trying to say here is it's kind of weird, though, because I found with some atheists that they get very, very offended by some of the things that I say. And I have respect for atheists, and I'm not a radical Christian or anything. But it's weird because they've used examples of people blowing up abortion clinics. I've never actually personally heard of anything like that ever even happening. But maybe it has, but I don't think it happens all that much. And as far as people, strapping bombs to themselves, I don't think it has to do with believing in a God. And I don't think everybody that believes in a God is going to strap a bomb to themselves and kill everybody, because it's kind of counterintuitive to the whole, do unto others as you do to yourself. But there's more layers to it, and people don't want to ask those questions about society, which is what motivates that person to do that. Well, a lot of times in countries like in Pakistan or Afghanistan, these people have nothing left to lose. I'm talking about the people in like Afghanistan and that. Never mind the people here in these developed, civilized countries, right? We're so civilized. Here we just do what? You're usually on a cocktail of drugs. So you got prescription drug cocktail led to Pennsylvania's shooting rampage. So that's another way of doing it besides a virus. But yeah, I mean, when you're getting drone bombed, when you're having countries come in here and tell you what to do, like the United States and that is doing, you put people in a corner and they tend to do things like that. But violence usually is never really the answer in the long term, so I'm not condoning violent actions. So we have here Harper government monitoring online chats about politics, correcting what it calls misinformation. So the Harper government has been monitoring political messages online and even correcting what it considers misinformation. It says here one local expert says the government is taking things too far. Under a pilot program, the government paid a media company $75,000 to monitor and respond to online postings about the East Coast seal hunt. So the government is the biggest peddler of misinformation, along with the mainstream media that's bought out by basically a few families. Rosenberg says, knowing that the government is monitoring certain topics online could result in people being more careful with their identities when they're posting about political issues on the internet. So, you can go there and check it out. Headlines will be posted. But that's why they want to tie that's why they're trying to create, went from a computer, so glitchy. That's why they're trying to create, governments are trying to create these laws that attach identities and IP address. I mean, you obviously have IP address, but so you're not anonymous, basically, is what I'm getting at. Okay, moving on here, we have internet activity to be monitored under new laws. Ministers are preparing a major expansion of the government's powers to monitor email exchanges and websites visited of every person in the UK. It was reported. Says here that under this legislation expected in next month's Queen's Speech, internet companies will be instructed to install hardware enabling the government's electronic listening agency to examine on demand any phone call made, text message, email sent, website access in real time, the Sunday Times reported. It says here that, however, ministers believe it is essential that the police and security services have access to such communications data in order to tackle terrorism and protect the public from themselves. Moving on here, we have Arizona passes sweeping internet censorship bill, legislation to make it illegal to use offensive language online. So remember what I said about sterile environments. They don't like you to swear. That's a Nazi world police state. It says here of Luciferians, and that's the funny thing. They're Luciferians, but they don't want you to swear. They don't want you to smoke or drink. Says here, the state legislature of Arizona has passed a bill that vastly broadens telephone harassment laws and applies them to the internet and other means of electronic communications. The laws, which being pushed under the guise of anti-bullying campaign. Oh yeah, the Luciferians are against bullying too. They're very big on anti-bullying measures. Would mean that anything communicated or published online that was deemed to be offensive by the state, including editorials, illustrations, or even satire, could be criminally punished. Then we have police are using phone tracking as a routine tool. Once the province, mainly of federal agents, has become a powerful and widely used surveillance tool for local pig officials. So it's kind of funny because the local police have been militarized, So yeah, it makes sense that they're going to have the same tools as the federal government as the states lose their sovereignty. I mean, the local pigs, they're pretty much federal agents. They have access to all the federal databases and everything, and they think that they're federal agents. They act like it too. So yeah, you can go in there and check it out, but there's another article on Wired you can check out. After car tracking smackdown, feds turn to warrantless phone tracking. Prosecutors are shifting their focus to warrantless cell tower location tracking of suspects in the wake of a Supreme Court ruling that law enforcement should acquire probable cause warrants from judges to affix GPS devices to vehicles and monitor their every move according to court records. The practice has become big business for cell phone companies too, with a handful of carriers marketing a catalog of, quote, surveillance fees to police departments to determine a suspect's location, trace phone calls, texts, or provide other services. We have the Defense Department seeks new authorities for a counterterrorism fight, and it goes on and it says that as the Pentagon begins to wind down the wars in Afghanistan, the smaller conflicts elite U.S. forces are fighting around the world are heating up. If we have a broader range of authorities, we can respond with more agility to each country with a different set of programs. Some of these threats are not pure terrorism. It says here the DoD needs to be able to go after groups that straddle the line between terrorism and organized crime. We're looking for some legislative authority that might be able to give us some broader authorities, legislative authorities, and multi-year funding for some types of operations I'd like to do. And they go on there and talk about South Africa, and that's a good example. Where the West is basically carrying out another operation to recolonize Africa and steal the resources. More UK police officers to use tasers building up to the Olympics. British police are increasing their use of taser stun guns despite mounting concerns about the public and campaigners that tasers are lethal and should be used in limited conditions. Then Big Brother just got scarier as Japanese CCTV cameras can scan 36 million faces per second and recognize anyone who has walked into its gaze. Next up, 21 signs that the UK is being transformed into a hellish Big Brother surveillance society. Go in there and check it out. But police in the UK using advanced software that enables them to track digital footprints of virtually anyone they want to investigate. In the UK, there's a 3-strike rule that allows your entire family to be cut off from the internet if anyone who lives in your house is accused of copyright infringement 3 times. Supreme Court OKs routine jailhouse strip searches even for minor offenses. Then we have French Constitutional Court bans law enforcement use of national biometric facial ID scanners. And national DNA database is worth discussing. A national DNA database should be discussed as heinous crimes go unsolved for decades, says Australian police. He's pushing for samples to be collected from all newborns in DNA database, then being used to compare crime scene DNA under Supreme Court warrants. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.